Hi everyone, welcome back to Heartsborn Reads. I'm Mr. Harper and I'm going to start reading you a book today which was one of my favourite books when I was growing up. And I'll tell you why I liked it so much, because when we used to go on family holidays, we used to all get into the car and we used to drive for a long time to Wales or Devon or Cornwall or France. And on the way we would always listen to audiobooks, or books on cassette as they used to be called back in my day. And one of the books that we always enjoyed listening to as a family was this one, Sophie, Snail by Dick King Smith. Now this book is in our school library, which is where I'm taking it from. So I am going to read it to you in its entirety over a series of videos on this channel. But if for some reason you want to read it yourself, if and when we get back into school, it will be in the library for you to borrow. So hopefully you're going to enjoy it. Let's get a start with chapter 1, which is called One Very Small Foot. What animal has got only 1 foot? Said the children's father. I bet you can't tell me. I can, said Matthew and Mark with one voice. As well as looking exactly alike, the twins nearly always said exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. Matthew was 10 minutes older than Mark, but after that there had never been the slightest difference between them. Go on then, said their father. Tell me, what animal has got only 1 foot? A chicken standing on 1 leg, they said. That's silly, said Sophie seriously. Sophie was 4, a couple of years younger than her brothers. That's silly, she said. It would still have a foot on the other leg. Anyway, Daddy, there isn't really an animal that's only got 1 foot, is there? Yes, there is, Sophie. What? A snail. Every snail has a big, flat, sticky muscle under it that it travels along on. That's called its foot. Next time you see a snail crawling along, pick it up carefully and turn it over, and you'll see. There are loads in the garden. Come on, let's find one, said Matthew and Mark to Matthew at the same time. Wait for me, said Sophie, but they didn't, so she plodded after them. When she caught up with the twins, in a far corner of the garden, each was examining the underside of a large snail. Sophie was not surprised to see the snails were also obviously twins, the same size, the same shape, the same striped greeny-browny colour. I know, said Matthew. I know what you're going to say, said Mark. Let's have a snail race, they said. How are you going to tell them apart, said Sophie. I know, said Mark. I know what you're going to say, said Matthew. Fetch us a felt pen, Sophie, they said. What are you going to do, asked Sophie when she came back with a red felt pen. Put my initial on my snail, said Mark and Matthew together. But you've got the same initial. The boys looked at each other. I know, they said. I know what you're going to say, said Sophie, and she plodded off again. She came back with a blue felt pen. And here you can see they're getting ready for their snail race. After a moment, ready, said Matthew, holding up his snail with a big red M on the shell, and at the same instant, ready, said Mark, holding up his snail with a big blue M. Wait for me, said Sophie. I haven't got a snail yet. But already the twins had set their snails side by side on the path that ran between the edge of the lawn and the flower bed. The path was made of big oval flagstones, and they chose the largest one, perhaps 1 metre long. The far end of the flagstone was to be the winning post. Ready, steady, go, they shouted. Sophie plodded off. I'll beat them, she said. She was small, but very determined. Behind the first stone she moved, almost as though it had been waiting for her, was a snail. It was as different as possible from red M and blue M. It was very little, no bigger than Sophie's middle fingernail, but it was a lovely buttercup yellow. As she watched, it stretched out its head, poked out its 2 horns, and began to crawl very slowly. It had a most intelligent face, Sophie thought. She picked it up carefully and turned it over. What a very small size shoe you would take, my dear, she said. I don't know whether you can win a race, but you are very beautiful. You shall be my snail. Who won? She said to Matthew and Mark when she returned. They didn't go the right way, they both said. But mine went the furthest, they both said. No, it didn't, they both said. They picked up their snails and put them side by side once more. Wait for me, Sophie said, and she put down the little yellow snail. It looked very small besides the others. Just look at Sophie's snail, hooted the twins. But this time, when they shouted, ready, steady, go, neither red M nor blue M would move. They stayed stubbornly inside their shells and took not the slightest notice of their owners' cries of encouragement. Sophie's snail plodded off. It was small, but very determined, and Sophie lay on the grass beside the path and watched it putting its best foot forward. After half an hour, it reached the winning post. Sophie jumped up. "Mine's the winner!" she cried, but there was no one to hear. The twins had become bored with snail racing at exactly the same time and gone away. Red M and Blue M had gone away too, into the forest of the flower bed. Only Sophie's snail kept stoutly on, whilst the straight, silvery trail it had left glistened in the sunshine. Sophie knelt down and carefully put her hand flat in front of a little yellow creature. It crawled solemnly onto it. "You have such an intelligent look, my dear," said Sophie. And here's Sophie talking to her snail. "What have you got in your hand, Sophie?" said her mother at tea time. "It's Sophie's snail," chorused Matthew and Mark. "Put it straight out into the garden," said the children's mother. "No," said Sophie, in a small but determined voice. Her mother looked at her, sighed, picked up a box of matches, emptied the matches out, and gave Sophie the empty box. "Put it in there till after tea," she said, "and go and wash your hands." Good advice for everyone at the moment. All that evening, Sophie played with her snail. When it was bedtime and she was ready to wash and do her teeth, she put the snail carefully on the flat rim of the wash basin. Then, as she always did, she filled the basin with warm water right up to the overflow and washed her face and hands. The snail did not move, though it appeared to be watching. Then, as she always did, she brushed her teeth very hard, making a lot of froth in her mouth and spitting the bubbly blobs of toothpaste out of the top of the rather dirty water. She always liked doing this. The toothpaste blobs made strange shapes on the surface of the water, often like a map of the world. Tonight there was a big white Africa at one side of the basin. Then, as she always did, she pulled the plug out, but as she turned to dry her hands, the sleeve of her dressing gown scuffed the rim of the basin. Right into the middle of disappearing Africa fell a small yellow shape, and then the last of the whirlpooling, frothing water disappeared down the plug hole, leaving the basin quite empty. Sophie plodded down the stairs. "My snail's gone down the plug hole," she said, in a very quiet voice. "Well, you couldn't have kept it, you know," said her father gently. "It would have died anyway without its natural food." "Next time you find one," said her mother, "just leave it in the garden. There are lots of other snails there, just as nice." "Not as nice as my snail," said Sophie. She looked so unhappy that for once the twins said different things in an effort to comfort her. "I expect it dried out quickly," said Matthew. "It's sure to be drowned by now," said Mark. Doesn't sound very comforting. Try as she would, Sophie could not stop herself thinking about what happened if you went down a plug hole. She lay in bed and thought about the twins washing their hands in the basin and washing their teeth, and later on, Mum and Dad doing the same. All that water would be washing the body of her snail farther and farther away, down the drain into the sewer, down the sewer into the river, down the river into the sea. When at last she slept, she dreamed that she was walking by the seaside, and there she saw washed up on the beach a familiar little yellow shape. But when she ran and picked it up, it had no head, no horns, no foot. It was just an empty snail shell. Sophie woke early with the feeling that something awful had happened, and then she remembered what it was. She plodded along to the bathroom and looked over the rim of the wash basin at the round plug hole with its metal grating meant to stop things going down it. "But you were too small," she said. Leaning over as far as she could reach, she stared sadly into the black depths of the plug hole. And as she stared, suddenly 2 little horns poked up through the grating, and then a head, and then a shell no bigger than her middle fingernail, a shell that was a lovely buttercup yellow. Very carefully, Sophie reached out and picked up her small, determined snail. Very quietly, she plodded down the stairs and opened the back door and went out into the garden and crossed the dewy lawn. Very gently, at the exact spot she'd found it, she put her snail down and watched it slowly move away on its very small foot. "Goodbye, my dear," said Sophie. "I hope we meet again." And then she sat happily on the wet grass watching, till at last there was nothing more to be seen of Sophie's snail. And there's Sophie, look, saying goodbye to her snail. And that is the end of chapter 1. Now, there are 5 more chapters of this book, and I'm going to read them all to you. So I hope that you enjoyed that one, and I hope that you come back to hear the other chapters when they go up onto the channel as well. Just keep checking. We're going to put videos up every day, but obviously lots of teachers are reading lots of books, so I can't tell you exactly when the next one of this is going to go up, but just keep checking the channel, and I'm sure you'll see it soon. Hopefully you're having lovely, lovely times at home. Hopefully you're reading lots of fantastic books whilst you've got this time of school. And don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to share this channel with your friends. We want as many people as possible to watch these videos and to really get excited about reading during this time. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.